We're going to start in a few seconds. We just want to remind all of you to turn off your cell phones, and if you need to take a call, please take it outside, and make sure my commissioners do the same. I have had the habit of making that mistake a couple times. Yep, we're ready to go. Welcome to the
Recording in
June
progress.
15th, 2023 Planning Commission hearing. I will call the hearing to order at 1 o'clock. Mrs. Esparza, can we please have a roll call?
Thank you. I'll go ahead and take a roll call. Chair Bonderson is absent today. Vice Chair Bauke.
Here.
Commissioner Boss. Present. Commissioner DeLuccio.
Here.
Commissioner Lodge.
Here.
Commissioner Wardlow.
Here.
And Commissioner Wiscombe.
Here.
We have quorum. Thank you.
Next item is preliminary matters, requests for continuances, withdrawals, postponements, and exigent items. Thank you. Ms. Esparza, with that, do we have any preliminary matters, requests for continuances or withdrawals or postponements?
Chair Bauke, we do not have any.
Okay, thank you. And then moving on to the next item is review, consideration, and actions of the following Planning Commission minutes and resolutions. Mrs. DeBusk, we have one set of minutes before us, which is the Planning Commission meeting minutes of June 1st. Are there any planning commissioners who have comments, corrections to the June 1st minutes?
Mr. Chair, I would like, well, the draft minutes say, Sarah Gorman, City Clerk Manager, gave the staff presentation. Graciela Reynoso, HR Manager, and Randy Rouse, Mayor, were available to answer questions. I thought it would be appropriate to say, since Mayor Rouse gave a fairly lengthy presentation himself, to change it to say, Sarah Gorman, City Clerk Manager, gave the staff presentation. Mayor Randy Rouse made a presentation. Graciela Reynoso was present to answer questions. And I gave this, I suggested changes to the Commission Secretary, and so I would like to make that amendment to it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lodge, does any other commissioners have comments on the minutes? No, I had one which I passed on to Ms. DeBusk, and do you want to read that one, or is that, it's basically grammar, so.
Chair Bauke, I don't have the language in front of me. If you want to just read those two additional words into the record, that would be great.
Okay, give me a second to find it. Yeah, it's my comments. One, four. Sorry, wrong section. Yes, in this, the first bullet that's in page 5 of 6, next to the last line, which would add the words, much of it to housing as soon as possible, add the word soon as possible, since the economics of it, of a commercial enterprise is simply not working. So I just want to add the two words soon as. Okay. So any other commissioners have comments? That's it. Do I have a motion that would include the corrections?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to move the June 1st, 2023 minutes with the corrections by Commissioner Lodge and Chair Bauke. Thank you.
I'll second that. We have a first and a motion and a second. Mrs. Esparza, can we have a roll call?
Thank you. Go ahead and take a roll call vote. Commissioner Boss. Yes. Commissioner DeLuccio.
Yes.
Commissioner Lodge.
Yes.
Commissioner Wardlow.
Abstain.
Commissioner Wiscombe.
Yes.
And Vice Chair Bauke.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
And that's all we have as far as minutes. So next is public comments pertaining to items not on this agenda. If there is any members of the public who would like to speak on items that are not on today's agenda, would you please come forward? Mrs. Esparza, do we have any in-person persons or remote folks that want to speak?
Thank you, Vice Chair Bauke. We do not have any speaker slips for general public comment, and currently we do not have any virtual participants. We did not receive any written correspondence for general public comment either. Back to the commission.
Okay, so we can close our public comment and move on. Okay. Going on next is, item would be to item 3, which is our new item, which is 335 South Milpas Street. Staff member Tony Bauman will give us a presentation, and then we'll follow that with the applicant's presentation, and then comments from the public and move on. So, Tony, you can start any time.
Right. Thank you, Chair Bauke, Vice Chair, and hello, Commissioners. This is a proposed project at 335 South Milpas Street. It's here today for a pre-application conceptual review at the request of the applicant. This is an extra hearing in addition to the normal review process that the project will go under. So in kind of late-breaking news yesterday afternoon, I was looking at the application again and realized that the staff hearing officer is the review authority for the coastal development permit, not the Planning Commission. And that is because the project's in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone, not the appealable jurisdiction, and also because the project doesn't require any other land use action by the Planning Commission. So for those two reasons, it defaults to the staff hearing officer. The Planning Commission will still be the review body for the request to exceed the 45-foot height limit. And that's, the Planning Commission always does that role, whether it's an ABR project, Historic Landmarks Commission, staff hearing officer. The Planning Commission always is the body that reviews requests for height exceptions. The project site is, like I said, non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone. The coastal zone extends up to the freeway in this area. Not too much more to say about that. So the project is proposing to demolish the 4 existing one-story commercial buildings and construct a new 4-story mixed-use building. Total floor area of the new building would be about 148,500 square feet. It would include 99 total residential units, plus about 6,000 square feet of commercial floor area to be occupied by a new Tri-County Produce. And the project uses state density bonus law for 33 of the 99 units. And the project's entitled to density bonus concessions and waivers. The required application is a coastal development permit to allow the development in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone. The purpose of today's hearing, like I said, it's a pre-application stage. It's concept review at the request of the applicant, and there will be subsequent required concept reviews by the ABR and Planning Commission prior to a formal application submittal. And those subsequent concept reviews are related to the height. The ABR gets a concept review at the pre-application stage, and then the Planning Commission considers the height request at the pre-application stage. So for today, the Planning Commission should provide comments with consideration of the findings that will be required to approve a coastal development permit. That part of the project, the coastal development permit, is really the aspect of the project that's under the jurisdiction of the staff hearing officer. So again, the review process is pre-application ABR concept review, pre-application Planning Commission review of building height, and then the applicant would submit a formal application for staff land development team to review for completeness. At that point, the ABR would have a formal concept review, and it might involve more than one ABR concept review, but they review it at the conceptual level until they get to the point where they're ready to say that the project's generally consistent with the project compatibility analysis criteria, and that's when they continue the item to the staff hearing officer. In that time frame, staff completes environmental review, and then it would go to the staff hearing officer for review and approval of a coastal development permit, to be followed by a return to the ABR for design review approvals. And just a little bit at the request of a couple of commissioners, just a quick look at state density bonus law. The project's proposing 15% affordable units in this first column. You see the 15%, and the 15% of the, and that's 15% of the base density units. So 15% of the 66 base density units are proposed at a very low income level. So that entitles the project to a 50% increase in density, or density bonus. So 60% plus the 50% bonus gets us to the 99 units. Along with that, 15% of the base density units proposed at the very low income level entitles the project to 3 development standard concessions, where they can waive things like parking or open space. And this is just a kind of a rundown of what I just said, and this is in the staff report. Base density is 66 units, and that is based, we've had public comment and questions from commissioners about that railroad easement, but as the code is written, and our understanding that it is an easement and not a fee ownership by the railroad, they include the railroad easement area in their land area or lot area for base density. So that allows the 66 units at 27 dwelling units per acre. The project proposes 10 very low income units, which is 15% of 66. And per state density bonus law, the project's entitled to the 50% bonus units. So 66 plus 93, or 33 is the total 99 units proposed. And the project's entitled to 3 concessions. So staff's recommendation for the hearing today is for the Planning Commission to provide comments on this conceptual submittal. And since the action that's going to be ultimately required is a coastal development permit, the most helpful feedback we think would be related to Coastal Act and Coastal Land Use Plan policy findings that the review authority would have to make. And I would add another item that staff would like some input on from the commission today is on the visual, how to evaluate the visual resources policies with regard to the proposed building. It's a big, tall building. Would you recommend that the applicant erect story poles or provide other visual aids or different vantage points that you recommend being shown so that the staff hearing officer could evaluate consistency with visual resources policies? And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Tony. So next will be the applicant's presentation. The applicant, I believe, is Jarrett Gordon, who will make his presentation. You have 15 minutes, I believe, and if there's any members of your team that comes up, please have them introduce themselves. You can introduce yourself and your relationship to the project, which I think you know the drill, and make sure your other team members, as they come forward, do the same. And you have 15 minutes whenever you're ready to go, Kara.
Great, excellent. Good afternoon, Chair Balke, Commissioners. I'm Jarrett Gorin from Vanguard Planning, and I represent the ownership of the project. And you're mostly going to hear from other people besides me today. We've got John Dixon of Tri-County Produce here, Brian Cornell of Cornell Collective, the architects, and we have Nicole Horn from CJM, the landscape architects. And like staff said, this is an extra hearing. We think this is the right place to start with this project. We're looking for some high-level comments and, more policy-level comments than we would normally get at Architectural Board of Review before we head into that process. And we think that the feedback you're going to give us today will help inform that process and the ABR and help everybody stay focused on getting this housing. So I'm going to turn it over to John Dixon.
All right. Hello, Commissioners. And as he said, I'm John Dixon, the owner of Tri-County Produce since 1985, long time. I still remember the day that my father took me for a car drive down Milpas Street, driving by Tri-County Produce. It was in 1984, and he asked me, he pointed to the building and said, "Hey, how would you like to be my partner in that building?" Of course, I got really excited about it, and we purchased Tri-County Produce. Totally excited about the opportunity. I started working there Friday, May 14th at 3:30 p.m. in the afternoon in 1985. And here we are 38 years later. That time and date is a whole nother story to be told at another time. The picture in front of you right there is, on that screen, is my favorite picture of my dad of all time. It's the favorite memory of him. That picture showed how happy he was in the element surrounded by our fresh produce. We had 30 happy and successful years together before he passed in 2016, about 7 years ago. I had been approached several times throughout the years with offers to purchase Tri-County Produce, being a valuable piece of property. Some wanted to build luxury condos, some talked about a nice big hotel there. And it wasn't until Chris Parker and Austin Hurley, who are here, came to me with the idea of much-needed rental housing for the city of Santa Barbara and the ability to keep Tri-County Produce as part of the project that got me interested in having a serious conversation with them. Being able to continue the legacy that my father and I spent 4 decades building was a win-win idea to me. I'm also excited that the plan is to have some of the units affordable for Tri-County Produce employees who are qualified to rent them. I'm looking forward to the future ribbon-cutting ceremony of this project and the new Tri-County Produce, whenever that happens. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Cornell.
Brian Cornell. Planning Commissioners, with me today is also Jeff Hornbuckle, my partner, so he may be correcting something I say wrong. Quickly, just an overview of the site. Here it is, 2.47 acres. These are some great aerial shots that give you the context of the neighborhood. Obviously, the Red Lion and the new hotel remodel at the corner of Milpas and Cabrillo. So just understanding the site context, if we take, a 1,000-foot radius around this, we obviously have freeway and train. We have transit corridor of Milpas and Cabrillo. We have industrial commercial to the north, and then surrounding the rest of it really is multifamily hotel along with park and open space to the south. And obviously there are coastal views and mountain views associated with it. And that's what, as Jared mentioned, we want big picture comments from you about this. We've enjoyed planning this project. These are some vantage points, obviously, of our neighborhood. For reference, you do see this is one of the views here where you can see in the southbound 101, if you turn your head sharply to the right, you can see a little bit of the project. So our inspiration for this, first and foremost, I think, was realizing that, the presence of this building and given its location relative to our coastal range here is Spanish. And these are just some inspirations of works that we have done. But we were also inspired really by the railroad tracks and the nature of that relationship. Particularly thinking about older buildings, that warehouse type that would have been built along the railroad tracks, and in fact, in this community, in some places are, like the Beacons Building, et cetera. So in looking at the site, we obviously have a large portion of it that is removed from building because of the railroad easement. And this is an aerial from above. This portion, by the way, of, got to get used to this little mouse. So this is what we know of as Tri-County Produce now, and that, interestingly, is exactly about 6,000 square feet. So our site plan, first and foremost, we knew that we needed to maximize the parking in the coastal zone. We have to meet parking demand. So that's really where we started on this. And we basically placed that 6,000 square feet on the corner of Calle Puerto Vallarta and Milpas for the new Tri-County Produce, and then the residential lobby for these residential units along Calle Puerto Vallarta. So we have 127 parking spaces. Let me go back there. 127 parking spaces. The intent here is that this is really a commingled use of parking. During the day, this area here will be for the commercial parking and Tri-County Produce, and this will remain residential. And then in the evening, all of that parking, all 127 spaces, will be available to residents. So this is the main second floor plan over the podium below, 39 residential units. Wanted to explain the mix of units. We have about 55% of our units are 2 bedrooms, and then the remainder are studio and 1 bedrooms. You can see we have a couple of 2-bedroom units there on the left. These are intended to be really very efficient living units. You can see they're not that large, just a little over 1,000 square feet. And then we have studios that are down in the 511 square foot. So we end up with an average unit size for the project that is, 820, which is just a little bit over our typical standard for AUD, which is 811 square feet. So the third floor repeats that same pattern. The blue there indicates some amenity space. Nicole Horn will be coming up shortly to give you a sense of the courtyard space and the landscaping. And then, knowing that fourth stories are always controversial, we felt it was critical, especially thinking about the mountain views from the coastal side of things, to peel back the fourth level, which we have done, and obviously then reduce the number of units on the fourth floor. And we also wanted to have ample flat roof for solar arrays, so we actually, in the areas shown in blue here, we've got about 13,000 square feet that will allow us for PV arrays. So the important thing, as I've already said, is really views from the coast towards the mountains, and I think this is one of the most telling views relative to what people will see. And this is the building superimposed. So I think this does illustrate how important it is that we do peel back that fourth floor so that the building really has a 3-story presence from the public viewing side of things. This is a little bit closer at Calle Puerto Vallarta and Milpas, and then that is the view of the building. So again, seeing how the fourth floor does step back, and obviously we create a prominence to the Tri-County Produce here on the corner, where we hope to have a little bit of outdoor seating and make it a lively place. Another view from Milpas, looking back towards the mountains. Obviously we do see some of the mountain view that is missing, but when I toggle back, Jared, I hit the wrong button there. Let's see. Escape?
IT support.
Thank you. You don't know how many times Jeff has to do that for me in the course of a day. So if I toggle back and forth on these, I think we can see the extent of the mountain view, and really the eucalyptus trees along the tracks obviously do some of that shading already. But we think that this mass is appropriate, and obviously look forward to your comments, especially taking into consideration the hotels that surround us. And then on the railroad side, you saw our inspiration images, and as Jeff and I explored this architecturally, we really felt that trying to sort of create a little bit of a homage to a railroad sort of development, and also in the interest of reducing the apparent mass of the building from it being all Spanish, we actually opted for a little bit more of an industrial look. So the building sort of breaks itself into two pieces, this more industrial sort of artist loft appearance with the larger windows facing to the north and the views, and then the Spanish architecture on the public side along the ocean. So I'm going to have Nicole come up soon here. This is the view from the freeway. So if you do turn your head as you're going southbound, you can see the Quonset hut. And then that would be the appearance from there. You know, that, you can see that there aren't any ocean views from that public viewpoint. You do see the palm trees along Cabrillo. And then northbound 101, this is kind of a Where's Waldo? But the building is accurately placed in that location. And then southbound a little bit further back from that previous shot that I showed, and the presence of the building along there. So the intent here is to give these buildings on the railroad side, again, that more industrial look, combining like Corten steel and the concrete in lieu of the plaster Spanish that will be on the ocean side. So Nicole, I'm going to have you come up and talk a little bit about the landscape. And are you here? Yes, there you are. If you want me to, I'll punch for you.
Oh, well, can I have a circle?
Yeah, that's forward, that's back. Don't touch that or it will do that funny thing.
But I want the pointer. That's all.
Oh, well, you can use the pointers, the upper one.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Nicole Horn, Associate Principal at CJMLA, Landscape Architect for the project. And this image here, the landscape plan, do we have the existing site plan? Is that next?
No, probably not.
Okay. All right, well, I was going to talk about the existing trees. So there are 15 existing trees on site. We're proposing to remove 10 of those. The majority of those are in the parkway. They're all non-native, and we're keeping 5 trees. So the parkway I'm talking about is in here. Those are all in poor health. We would go to the Street Tree Advisory Committee to get those approved, the removals approved. And then we're proposing a total of 35 new trees. So a lot in the parkway, in this, the streetscape on both Calle Puerto Vallarta and Milpas, and then we have some on the podium. And then this corner feature plaza on the bottom corner here, the screen, that's a little commercial plaza. We're planning to have seating, have a kind of a low wall to protect the public from sort of the street environment here. And the idea is that people will be able to purchase grocery items, come out here and snack on them. And then we have some biofiltration planters up here in the north part of the project. And then the podium. So the main idea for the podium is that this is a really engaging space for the residents. And we have a variety of passive and active recreation and visual viewing opportunities. So we wanted to have like a number of little spaces people could enjoy with seating, trees to provide shading. We have a large communal table here under a trellis. And again, kind of the idea is that we want people to come out, engage with their neighbors, and they are right above this beautiful grocery store, so we wanted to provide an opportunity to have a meal outdoors. And then we've got this central feature here, which I'm calling the olive. It's kind of an olive shape. And we've got a large heritage olive tree that we're planning for the podium there. And the podium would be depressed so that we can have ample space for that tree to go in at a very large size. And then we just have some space for games right there, and kind of this main connection between the two sides of the building. And I wanted to point out we've got kind of a variety of shapes, these kind of organic forms, and then this diagonal kind of more organic or less organic, more formal shape. And that, I think, is a little bit in relationship to the two sides of the building. We've got kind of the informal, organic that goes along with the kind of Spanish side. And the idea is that we're trying to soften kind of those hard edges and make it feel less like a rectangle.
We are done. I do have some slides that show the elevations and sections if you want to look at those. We obviously are here to answer questions. Looking forward to if you can give us some ideas of your thoughts on when we do come back to you for that height exception. We're at 45 feet now and proposing to go to 51 and a half. And with that, I look forward to your questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cornell. I presume we will be asking questions that you will be able to present those elevations and other drawings that you haven't, so just
happy to
be
do
prepared
that.
to do that. So moving on, next will be public comment. Do we have any in-house or virtual public commenters at this point?
Thank you, Vice Chair Bauke. Let me go ahead and start with virtual public comment first, as we do have quite a few in person. If anyone participating virtually would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand and we can call on you. Not seeing any raised hands, so we'll go ahead and start through our stack of in-person public comment. I will go ahead and announce the first speaker and then announce who's on deck, so just be aware. First up, we have Rich Block, and then afterwards we'll have Ashley Snyder.
Commissioners, there's Rich Block. I am the president and CEO of the Santa Barbara Zoo. So I am a resident in this neighborhood at least 10 hours a day. And spoiler alert, we are desperate for housing for our employees. And that is exactly what every single nonprofit representative would say if they came up here today, and probably almost every business in town as well. We are desperate for housing, and the timing on this is incredible, partly because of the overhaul of Dwight Murphy, which will totally change the character of that area. And this is an opportunity to actually create a space for people in a zone that now is be a high-value recreation area. With Dwight Murphy and the zoo and the beach in close proximity, it's an incredible location. And for us and everyone else that's desperate for housing for employees, these are important projects. And just one quick example before I step back, just the fact that a number of residences in Isla Vista evicted their tenants totally had a huge impact on our zoo camp for this summer, where we lost housing for camp counselors who'd been committed for the summer that had to leave Santa Barbara, which lowered the number of students that could be in our zoo camp, which lowered the income that we would anticipate from that. And for an institution that runs on 95% of our earned revenue, that's a big impact on us. So having this in close proximity not only represents housing, but we can imagine a lot of zoo members being able to walk to the zoo from these residences. Anyway, we think it's a great project and wholeheartedly support it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ashley Snyder, followed by Jean Daring.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Ashley Parker Snyder, and I'm here to support this project because my family has an interest in the Hilton Hotel in this very neighborhood. We're pleased that the project is in the works because, as was mentioned, the units are going to directly benefit the young professionals that we employ and hopefully a lot of other people who work in hospitality and work in and around the waterfront. As someone who grew up in Santa Barbara, I'm really pleased that Tri-County Produce will be an integral part of the project as well. It's nice that that beloved local business will be able to continue to serve the community and the guests at our hotel, frankly. And lastly, we're very pleased that the project is in the capable hands of Brian Cornell, who has an extensive and impressive portfolio of beautiful buildings in Santa Barbara. So even if this project ends up having a fourth story, I have no doubt that it will prove to be an architectural standout in the enhancement of the Milpas corridor. So thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jean Deering, followed by Karen Kearns.
Hello, Commissioners. Gene Deering. I live in the city of Santa Barbara, and it was September, year 2000. I'm walking on campus at UCSB by Campbell Hall. I said to myself, I want to find a way to stay in Santa Barbara for the rest of my life. Fast forward 23 years later, I'm still here. There's young freshmen, UCSB students, probably with that same dream, and improving projects like this gives them the opportunity to stay here. So I would hope maybe 4 years from now, you're walking your dog over by the zoo, you walk up and see someone up on a balcony, maybe they're working on their computer, it's a young person, and you think, well, a project like this might have kept that person here, and who knows? That could be a Mike Tobes, that could be a Leslie Ridley Tree, that could be a Joe Howell, some of the great people that make our community what it is. And projects like this, I think, help do that. We need housing. Bigger sites like this afford us the ability to knock out some bigger chunks. And if we can get to 99 units here, that makes a lot more sense, adding the fourth story, than trying to do a bunch of 4-unit projects here and there. And I'm strongly in support of this project, and Jet and Teal will start at Zoo Camp on Monday. They weren't told that they have to cancel their camp. So appreciate your guys' attention to this, and go Gauchos.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, it's Karen Kearns, followed by Brad Froling.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name's Karen Kearns. I'm a longtime local resident, and I'm here to express my support for the project. I feel like the community is super lucky to have a complete local team approaching the development of this really magical site, and the fact that they're allowing Tri-County to continue its legacy of having their business there, as well as their thoughtful incorporation of places for the community and the residents all to hang out around the property. I think that the overlays that you'll see and the pictures that showed the scaling back of the fourth floor particularly will be powerful in your final determination of whether to allow that extra height. But I encourage you to really look at that in a positive way. And we have 3 adult children that all want to live home in Santa Barbara, and 2 have moved back. Only 1 has been able to buy a home. Renting is tough. Doesn't matter what your income is. Every young professional deserves a nice place to live, as well as every workforce employee. So I encourage you to approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Brad Froling, followed by Jeff Kearns.
Hi, Commissioners. Thanks for your time today. I'm a local community member. I don't have any connection to the project, other than over the years I've seen the objections to projects like this, and then you see the finished product, and you see, excuse me, the families, whether it's just these beautiful new apartments we haven't created in decades, and now you have a developer, responsible developer, which is always the key, creating a community and 99 doorknobs that don't exist right now. So basically the quality of life for so many citizens can be enhanced, excuse me. And it's kind of interesting, this particular site, if we propose the buildings that are there today, they wouldn't even make it through the front door. This is from a different era, so this is a high quality project. The 4-story and the density, I know that's controversial. I believe that if we don't allow this in the right places, we'll never move the needle on our housing issue. I mean, the only thing we could do is go into the foothills, and we're not going to do that. And so I think it's the right place, and it's a very responsible. You got a local developer that has a great track record, and then you've got an architect that's done amazing work in our town, and I think it'll benefit everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jeff Kearns, followed by Mike Lupus.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Kearns, and my wife, Karen, who spoke earlier, and I have lived here roughly 30 years. And all this minutia about density, base densities, bonus densities, all that stuff. I've never bothered to try to figure out and really understand, but I do know a basic truth, which is housing is in shortage. And so housing will be built. It's going to have to be built. So if you have a trusted local team that's going to do it, it seems like that's the best best option you could probably have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mike Lupus, followed by Steve Golis.
Hello, I'm a local renter in town here in Santa Barbara. I moved here about 3 years ago, and that process of trying to find housing in town was very difficult, very limited. And so some project like this, in my mind, makes a lot of sense. It's a great opportunity to add additional housing, as well as high-quality housing in a location that couldn't be, have a better use. So my thought is I'm in full support of this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Steve Golis, followed by Kent Wojciechowski. Apologies if I mispronounced that.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Steve Golis, and some of you guys know me. I'm a little nervous because I know Tava quite well, so I don't want her writing me up or anything. But I'm in the apartment world. Some of you guys may know me, and I know apartments pretty well. And this project is sorely, sorely needed for just the workforce housing. We all know that. I'm at the forefront of that with the stuff trying to help with the city council and so on. There's no greater need than workforce housing and low-income housing. This project in that location is a win-win with an absolute winning team. Plus, I think the best part of it is we'll get to see John Dixon continue in commercials running Tri-County Produce. So I don't know how much airtime he buys, but he buys a lot. And the developers we can't ask for a better crack team. And when Rich talked about the zoo element, that's absolutely phenomenal. And Austin and the development team, they want to make sure they get the low income, the moderate income, and everything else we all know we need. And Gene Deering, I think, said it correctly. I'm not going to repeat what he said, but that project and that location, we don't have many properties, land uses in this area that we can build that kind of scale. And Gene's right, we can't knock it away with 2 to 4 unit buildings. It's just not possible with the amount of people we try to cover. So I'm in support of the project, and thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, it's Kent Wojciechowski, followed by Brian Russell.
You said it perfectly. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I've been part of this city for almost 30 years. I did 25 years as a patrol officer and 3 years as a police background investigator. And it's how I got to meet John Dixon about 25, 26 years ago. That area, I've seen every part of it, the good, bad, and the ugly. And during about 25 or so years ago, was part of the ugly. And we had a very massive problem down in that area, and John and the East Beach Coalition came in and helped settle some of those issues. And he's always been part of this community. Every time you ask him to do something, he steps up, he wants to be part of the community. So John and I are like brothers. I was at his dad's bedside when he passed, and we're like brothers. And many of people have come to him with projects similar to this. With the exception, they wanted to do away with Tri-County, they just basically wanted to take over that piece of land and not really do what's best for the community. And John has turned them down repeatedly, time and time again. With this team that came in, it was about keeping the tradition of Tri-County. It was about keeping the look of Santa Barbara and how we could do that. I was with the Fess Parker family when I sat in this courtroom, in this council chamber, when we looked at taking away the height on the mountains, and it was very important. And we're not doing that on this project, and they didn't either. So I just want you to know I'm full support of this because of the team, and it's a good project with John Dixon at the helm and the team at the helm. They're going to do a very good job for this community, and they will make everyone proud.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Brian Russell, followed by Jeff Devers.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Brian Russell. I'm a real estate and land use attorney. And I just want to say this is a great project for Santa Barbara. It checks several boxes. The property is zoned and is appropriate for the use that is for this property. It is smartly designed and the architecture blends well with the existing community. 99 units will really help Santa Barbara meet their arena numbers, and I'm sure HCD will be very supportive of this project as well. Also, this project is really forward-thinking to have Tri-County Produce be part of the project. It keeps a legacy in Santa Barbara moving forward. So this is probably as close to a no-brainer of a project as it comes, and I hope you approve it, as I'm very supportive of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, it's Jeff Devers, followed by Robert Laskoff, please.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Jeff Devers. I echo what everyone prior to me had said. I'm a very large supporter of this. You look at the track record of who's on the team, and it speaks volumes to Santa Barbara. The one thing that they didn't note is that we lose a lot of rental opportunities to other cities and other counties. So I work for a large defense company in town, and when we're hiring systems managers and program managers and electrical engineers and mechanical engineers, folks that are making, well into the six figures, they can't stay here. So we lose those folks to the neighboring cities and counties up above and down south. So everything that is going on here, keeping everything local with the 99 units, that will be a big blessing to those folks that are looking for jobs and want to stay in Santa Barbara and not make the commute, and us losing those folks to other cities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, it's Robert Laskoff, followed by Stephanie Diaz.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to speak. I live at 402 Aria Del Mar, but the entrance and exit to my apartment is actually on Puerto Vallarta, as are four of the other apartments. So in order to get in and out, we have to go on Puerto Vallarta and not Aria Del Mar. And the traffic at the corner of Milpas and Aria Del Mar at times gets really backed up. Because there are now two sets of traffic lights on Milpas Street, one before the train tracks and one after the train tracks. And people are coming up from the beach on Milpas Street, and people are taking left-hand turns from Puerto Vallarta onto Milpas Street. And then people are going in and out of the only entrance to Tri-County. And so it gets backed up at times. I've known John Dixon, and he's a wonderful guy, and he's a good corporate citizen, and he runs a great shop. My concern is the amount of cars that are going to be added to the mix. And I noticed in the presentation, they said that they're counting the total number of parking spaces, including the commercial spaces. So during the day, those spaces, I think, would be precluded from the residents. And that's not my problem. My problem is where they're going to go and where they're going to park. And in the busy seasons, when we have tourists coming in, you can't park on Puerto Vallarta or Aria Del Mar. And then when the zoo has events, there's additional parking problems because they actually park all the way up Puerto Vallarta. And then when there are things going on the ball field, soccer games or whatever, it gets backed up as well. So my concern is not the project itself, is how you're going to get in and out of the project and not prevent me from getting in and out of my apartment. My apartment, if I can just show you. It's right up there. And so I'm really concerned with the project having an accessible easement, egress and ingress without backing up the traffic further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Stephanie Diaz, followed by Tim Warner.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Stephanie Diaz, and I lived in Santa Barbara. I just counted it up, 45 years. And I live in the neighborhood. I'm on Corona Del Mar, which is 2 blocks away. And I'm very excited that we're possibly going to get an apartment building. It's really exciting. I haven't heard much other than that there were going to be the very low-income units, and wondering whether there's any thought been talked about other than market rate units. That might be, maybe they call them workforce, but I know market rate, especially in that neighborhood, is very high. And I've also stepped past the birthday where I now am called a senior, and there is little or no housing available for seniors. And this would be somewhere that would be in a price range, as well as having accommodations within units that would have availability for seniors. I'm excited Tri-County is going to remain there as a walking place for all of us neighbors. We call out, hey, anyone need anything in Tri-County? We walk over there together, and you can always see somebody coming back carrying a Tri-County bag walking down the street. I'd also like to mention something about traffic. That corner that was just talked about is definitely a traffic concern, but a concern we have on Corona Del Mar is big trucks, big delivery trucks, and I'm talking even semi-truck trailers, turn for some reason off Milpas and go right down Corona Del Mar. Basically, I think because it leads to the back side of all those hotel buildings. So they're servicing, and that is a narrow street, it's a residential street, and they just bomb down the middle of the street. It's too really narrow for two cars to park. So when a truck is going, those big trucks are going fast down that street, it's becoming dangerous. And I did talk to the city's traffic staff, and they said, well, I asked, could we have a speed limit sign? Could we have a sign that says no trucks beyond a certain weight could be turning into that area? And I'd like to see story poles. I think that would be real helpful. And I was wondering who is going to be the, is it the staff hearing officer that looks at and approves the environmental document? So overall, I'm excited to see apartments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Tim Werner, followed by Seth Wolf.
Good afternoon. My name's Tim Werner. I'm property owner right across the street on Calle Puerto Vallarta in Arroyo Del Mar. I have mixed feelings on the project because I really do want to see the project done, and there's definitely a need for a lot of housing in our town. On the other side, I don't want to see our town turn into Santa Monica and have four-story buildings with zero setbacks, which I've essentially 150,000 square feet on a net lot of 1.35 acres is probably the most densely developed parcel in the whole entire city of Santa Barbara. I'm worried about a precedent that the Parker family decides it'll be more profitable to bulldoze their Red Lion or Hyatt or whatever it is now. And if they took the same zoning and formula, they'd probably build about 1,500 units there. I'd hate to see the waterfront change. I would like to see this project go through on a smaller size, bulk, and scale. Very concerned about the parking. I don't know if any traffic studies have been done. If they do them, I'd like to see it post-COVID now and during the summer when you've got zoo activity and tourists in town. The parking coming solely off of Calle Puerto Vallarta would be disastrous. I think it definitely needs a third entrance and exit off of Milpas. I know there's a stoplight there, but that it's close to, but having three egresses would be extremely, extremely important. I'd rather see the project shrink down to 55 units, which would be essentially the maximum state density on the buildable land. Taking in the acre plus of the easement is just, it's kind of taken the density to a whole nother level. If they could stick with about 55 units on the, and go 2 and 3 floors, it would be a fantastic project, fantastic gateway to the Milpas corridor and the waterfront. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Sepp Wolf, and this is our last speaker slip. So if there's anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak on the item, please fill out a speaker slip now and turn it in.
Hi there, Commissioners. Thank you for your work in our community, for the community and in the community. My name is Sepp Wolf. I'm also a real estate owner and developer here in town. Just recently opened the Drift Hotel on State Street, an adaptive reuse project of an old historic building, bringing new life to that part of State Street, bringing a nice use to what had been a very dead use for many, many years. So I appreciate good projects. I've known John Dixon for many years. I go to Tri-County Produce on a weekly basis. I'm so happy to see that this project incorporates his use in his grocery store into perpetuity, because that's a great legacy here in town. Nobody has mentioned how ugly the site currently is. I mean, it is maybe the most underutilized, ugliest patch of dirt with a few Quonset hut buildings. Every person that looks at commercial real estate in town would love to do something with this site, and I would think that as commissioners, you would as well. So here's a great opportunity to align with a local developer. As a local developer, I like locals doing projects in Santa Barbara, not folks coming into town from Santa Monica or LA or San Diego. So you have a great local team applying, putting in an application for a project that they're going to stand behind, that they're going to drive past each day. So I think the project looks great. You've got a great local architect that knows this town better than anyone else. And if there is a site to maximize, I think this is it. It is a gateway site. That was a key word that I heard in the last speech. It's a gateway site that needs to be maximized. And Milpas is one of your main streets in town. This is a main corridor on and off the freeway. And so what a great opportunity to add something vibrant, full, dense, and providing our community what it needs, more housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have one more speaker slip. And I'm so sorry I could not read the writing. It starts with a V. I'm sorry. Please come up to the podium. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Victor DeNovi. I'm a tenant in one of those ugly Quonset huts there. I've been there for 43 years. In a sense, I have the most to lose from this because I'm going to be displaced when it happens. On the other hand, this is not what I need. This is what the community needs. And everybody has some valid points. The people who brought some of the more negative ones up have to recognize that the city's changing and everything changes. And we need housing more than we need an airy feeling around the waterfront area. There's plenty of space for that. This city is becoming a little gentrified. That's a natural thing. It's not something we need to be afraid of. It's going to happen no matter what anyway. So I really support this project. I have a 28-year-old son who can't find a place to live in town. So I'm perfectly willing to give up the great spot I've had for 43 years to accommodate that. We all have to do that. This is a community. It's not just a bunch of individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not have any more speaker slips. We did receive written correspondence from 9 individuals, which was distributed to the commission prior to the meeting. So with no speaker slips and no more virtual public comment, I'll go ahead and turn it back to the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to have the commissioners do the comment period. So questions period. Sorry, my mistake. Who would like to go first? Donald, you came up first, so would you like?
Yeah, I'll go first for a change. This may be a question for the applicant or the staff. I just want to understand, I know there's going to be 10 low-income units on the property. How long will they be deed-restricted for? Is it 99 years? Or who makes that determination?
Commissioner DeLuccio, it's 55 years.
55 years.
State
Okay.
density bonus law is 55 years.
55 years, okay. And then for the deed-restricted units, when they're rented out, who, are they rented out by the owner of the property? How's that determined who gets those units?
Commissioner DeLuccio, are you asking about the affordable units? Who
Affordable
determines
units,
those? So through,
lower-income units.
correct. So the city does require essentially a housing plan that gets approved by our housing division, and they work with the applicant on what those requirements are, how they're going to vet those tenants. But ultimately, it is the property owner that does rent the units.
Okay. And also, I hear the word workforce housing. Maybe the applicant can answer that question, because in the letter that they wrote there's going to be workforce housing. So how do we define what you mean by the applicant by workforce housing?
Chair Balke, Commissioner DeLuccio, I think it ultimately comes down to these are small units. The average size is 820 square feet. As I mentioned at the site visit, we actually think that some of these, the way we've configured these two-bedroom units, that they will allow two individuals potentially to rent them and have a good housing situation. I know, people are tired of hearing affordable by design, but the reality is we need more smaller units, and that's where the workforce would come in.
So that's the definition that you're using, because the Coastal Housing Coalition, they wrote a letter and they defined, they define workforce housing as households earning 120 to 200% of the AMI, the area medium income. So that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking more about the makeup of the units, as you define them as workforce, not what you're going to rent them for.
Well, personally, I would hope that is the range that we end up renting these for. It's hard to say. At the end of the day, I don't think there's anything that, will determine definitively what the rents will be. The market will do that.
Okay, so the thing we have of certainty, we have the lower income units, those 10 obviously will be rented out at that level. And how are the 10 units, I think we had a site visit, I think you alluded that 55% of them are two bedrooms, and that's of the 10, maybe half would be two bedrooms?
Well, that's right. The percentage of the affordable is going to have to parallel the actual percentage. So yes, there would be 55% of the 10 would be two bedrooms.
And I wanted you to forgive me, because I did serve on another commission for many years, and things were done quite differently. I actually came from a very progressive city, West Hollywood. So this next question is, how are the units going to be dispersed throughout the building? How are they going to be, even though they're low-income units and they're different sizes, are they going to be, where will they be positioned within the building so they're equal to the other units?
Well, we haven't placed those units, but we will have to work with staff to determine which units are actually the affordable units, and yes, they will need to be dispersed throughout the building.
Terrific. And then the height, the 51, what's really before us about the height, going from 45 to 51 and a half feet, and that's obviously the fourth story going up, and that's what accounts for the higher height, that whole fourth story?
Yes. We really, one of the things, and you've heard me say this before, the ceiling height in these smaller units is really important. So we have managed, in fact, I can show you, since I wasn't hiding these slides before, but let's see if I can, it's not letting me forward. Maybe there we go. Had to wake it up. If we look at the sections, I think you can see we have 11 foot, basically floor to floor. So that ensures that we'll have a little more than a 9-foot ceiling in these units. And that's really what was the critical determinant of the height of the building.
Okay. I think those are my questions for the moment. we'll have comments later, so, okay, thank you, Chair.
Next speaker is Commissioner Wiscombe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Baumann, just a clarification, do you not want us to ask questions about parking, or, we got a lot of comments about parking and traffic from public comment in the letters we received, so who is actually going to be the spokes organization for those people that have concerns on that?
Well, the commission's free to comment on anything. We were suggesting comment on things that are within review purview. For example, you wouldn't talk about how many density bonus units are allowed, because that's prescribed by state law.
Right,
that sort
no,
of
I
thing.
understand
But feel
that.
free to comment on any other issues or public concerns that you've heard.
I just want to make sure that if we're addressing only building height, finally, and that there is a venue where people can express concerns about maybe numbers of parking, and also I have a question about, is there a traffic study that is going to be done for Calle Puerto Vallarta? Because it seems like, since that's the ingress and egress points of the project, that will staff require that they do an actual traffic study there to see the impacts on traffic?
We indicated a traffic study or a traffic model run would need to be done regarding the intersection with the freeway, Milpas and 101 intersection. So we will be doing more review and environmental review for that.
Okay, I'd like to hear from Mr. Cornell, because my question relates to, we've heard from people here, and we have letters from people who actually live in that neighborhood. They live on, the streets changed names, so I apologize if I don't get the name right, but the one that we're dealing with is Calle Puerto Vallarta. And then the streets that go off of that, some of you live on Arroyo del Mar, so and there was concern if the ingress and egress changes there that it's going to impact those streets for traffic. So, Mr. Cornell, you have something to say.
Well, we have done a thorough parking demand study.
Yes, that's in our package, yes.
So that has been done. As I mentioned at the site visit, we originally wanted to have this exit, which is pretty much at the same location as the southerlymost curb cut currently serving that small parking lot for Tri-County. But transportation staff was very concerned about the issue of traffic backing up in the event of a train crossing. So they asked us to eliminate that driveway. It would be our preference to have that, but transportation staff said, no, we're not going to support it, and you would have to go to whoever the commission is, that Public Utilities Commission, basically, to be able to get that approved. So it left us with the entrances off of Calle Puerto Vallarta. From a demand standpoint, though, from a parking demand standpoint, we do meet the parking for the store and the residential in total.
I know, I'm not talking about parking, I'm talking
Okay.
about traffic.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, we
that's
would-
where
I mean,
and
we-
there's going to be people that are exiting the building, turning right, and then turning right again to get on the freeway. And it's it's that impact to that area that I'm concerned about. So I'll just leave it as a comment for later.
Sure.
But I'm hoping that will be addressed as a traffic study. And I understand the parking study, and we have that in our packet, so, yeah.
So Chair Bauke, Commissioner Wiscombe. So, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but on any project like this, when we go ahead and submit the formal application, they're going to route it, and they'll route it to Transportation and Public Works. And one of the things they do is they'll look at our proposed package of uses here, and they will start with the existing uses on the site, which are currently generating traffic on these streets, and that's going to be the existing traffic baseline. And then they're going to calculate our future package of uses and see what the future traffic will be to come up with a net impact from this. And they'll put that through a screening threshold they have. So they have a traffic model. They know what the level of service is at all of these intersections. They also, the model knows which way these cars are going to go and all that. And they'll have a lot of information out of that alone. But what I'm hearing is that it would be valuable to maybe have a traffic consultant like Associated Transportation Engineers, who did our parking demand study, also do a study specific to this. Is that what you're getting at?
Well, not necessarily. I know what you're talking about, the process, and it's just getting down to that one line at the end of the whole process of evaluating it that says the impacts to the traffic are negligible, or whatever the word is. I can't remember what word they use.
Less
but
than significant.
Less than significant, thank you. Yes, I knew it wasn't negligible, but, so, and how you get there is not my business, whether you hire someone or not. I don't know. I think you can work with staff on that, but
Okay.
thank you for that.
Thanks.
And stay up here, Mr. Gorin, because I have another question. So I want to just ask you about neighborhood outreach. What have you done so far with neighborhood outreach?
I met with Tim Werner. I met with the zoo, obviously.
Yeah.
Mr. Fullick, come on up here, and yeah, okay, so.
So one of the benefits of what I'm sorry, Austin Hurley.
I'm Austin Hurley, yeah, I'm sorry.
But one of our first outreaches was to go meet with different neighbors, the Fess Parker family. We met with Tim Werner, who got up and spoke and had some positive and some negative comments about it. We met with the zoo. We met with the Gwendolyn Strong Foundation. So we've gone out and met with them. We've gotten support from them. You've heard from them.
Have you met with some neighbors that have concerns about the height of the building?
Tim Werner.
Okay. And you working to address those and try to make sure? I know Mr. Cornell said that the fourth story is going to be cut back, so, or is cut back.
It is cut back.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
And whether it's 4 stories or 2 stories, or 3 stories, it basically has the same feel right now, the way that it's set back on the 4 story. So
Right, okay.
we've tried to do as much as we can to be sensitive to
Right.
people's needs and
Okay.
so forth, but it's, as you probably know, it's hard to make everyone happy.
No,
And I'm not-
it's just working so people feel that their voices are being
Right.
heard. And, yeah, and I think and I think even most of the people that are negatively commented about, the height are also in favor of the project, so.
Right.
So you've got that going for you, so, okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. And then the industrial portion, as I'll call it, of the building. So is that also by design because of the solar? There's significant amount of solar on that, and I'm just curious if that's.
Well, I will, I'm sorry, Chair Bauke, Commissioner Wiscombe. We did feel that it was important to keep the 4th story as low as possible, hence a flat roof seemed to be the best solution, and obviously the flat roof allows for solar panels. I will go back here to, well, no, I need to go forward, don't I? Looking at the elevations, again, this was a lot of debate within our office as far as what to do about the back, because it is, it is predominantly 4 stories. You can see it peels back at either end. This is the railroad elevation right here. We also thought in terms of the fact that these really are sort of ideal, sort of artist studio kind of units. We could have a lot of glass to the north. They obviously will have extraordinary mountain views in this location. But when we made it all Spanish, it just didn't feel as good as it felt when we split this up a little bit. And there obviously is a story about how this could have been a railroad-oriented kind of warehouse look, and that's very much what we want to achieve. And when we look at it from the standpoint of the Milpas elevation, which is right here, it does then create kind of a distinct break in the building to where it feels like it's kind of two buildings, which I think ultimately will relieve the sense of mass, even though I acknowledge this is a big building. There's no question about it.
Would the roof, would it be even higher if it weren't a flat roof with solar panels on it, on the industrial part?
Well, at the peak of it, it would be.
It would be,
yes.
yeah. So it would be higher?
Yes.
Okay. If it were all Spanish?
Well, I mean, look, I could still do a flat roof and have it be all Spanish. So again,
Yeah,
that
that's
this
right. I
is-
forget you can do anything.
Yeah, no, so I don't think that, but I do think it should be a flat roof as opposed to a tiled roof, and we do want to have the ability to put the solar panels on, so it
Right.
does both things.
Okay. Okay, and I think that's pretty much all the questions I have. I'll save the rest of it for comments. Thank you.
The next commissioner up is Commissioner Lodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Cornell,
Uh-oh.
could you,
Happy birthday again, by the way.
oh, thank you.
Mayor Lodge.
Thank you. We've gone around on this before, but I'm thinking about 414 Chapala, which was done by your office, which is 4 stories and 45 feet, very attractive looking, and they're renting for $5,000 a month. Why do you really have to have the higher seatings? I recognize the ground floors because of the commercial. What is the plate height there?
At 414?
No,
Chapala?
no, at 335.
Oh, here, the plate height?
Yeah,
Well, it's
for the ground level.
Oh, for the ground level, I believe it's 14 feet? Yeah, and that admittedly, it's 14 feet floor, and that is really to give Tri-County Produce a reasonable ceiling height in that space. I mean, that's a 6,000 square foot space, and it does need to have that. That's probably a couple of feet more than what we would typically do if we didn't really have a retail use for a podium structure like this. But that ceiling is important in that retail space. And if I may also mention, relative to 414 Chapala, we barely fit within the 45 feet. And the only way we could do that is that the upper units are all townhomes and have sloping ceilings where they have much lower ceilings in them at that upper floor. So I can tell you that, you know, it is really very challenging to put 4 stories in 45 feet, and it would compromise these living spaces.
Well, again, seeing what the rents are that are being charged for 414, it doesn't, and having been in Casa de los Fuentes, which is a housing authority project, as you know, and in which the ceiling heights are, I think they're 8.5 feet on the ground floor and are 8 feet on the other floor as well, and perhaps the same for El Carrillo?
El Carrillo, I believe that those ceilings are, you know, those units are 280 square feet, and those units the ceilings are 8 feet.
And I've been in those too, and they are quite livable. So I just don't buy that argument that you need to have this overhead space that you can't use, you know, unless you're Eric Friedman or somebody like that who's excessively tall, as far as some short people like myself are concerned. Okay, thank you, Mr. Cornell. Those are my questions.
Next speaker will be Commissioner Boss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I just have one question remaining, and this is, I think, for staff regarding the height limit. I'd like a better understanding of the requirements that would be met, that need to be met to approve. I think we're going to be asked for a community benefit, for certain findings for a community benefit housing project, and I think that's demonstrated need and livability and some other requirements. Can you talk us through that?
I was going to bring a copy of that with me, and I forgot. There are 4 criteria. Demonstrated need is one of them. Allison's looking it up.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Boss. So the first one is demonstrated need, and that is that the applicant has adequately demonstrated a need for the project to exceed 45 feet in building height that is related to the project's benefit to the community or due to site constraints or in order to achieve desired architectural qualities. Number 2, architecture and design, that the project will be exemplary in its design. Number 3, livability, that the project will provide amenities to its residents which ensure the livability of the project, with particular attention to good interior design features such as the amount of light and air or ceiling plate heights. And number 4, sensitivity to context. The project design will complement resources.
Thank you. Would it be appropriate now to ask the applicant to speak to those? Would you be willing to do that?
Chair Balke, Commissioner Boss. I think I've already spoken about the ceiling heights, and Mayor Lodge and I respectfully disagree. I think these ceilings, it's our experience that these ceiling heights make a big difference in the units. We recently finished the project on De La Guerra, where Radius offices are, and we were constrained by 45 feet, and those units have lower ceilings that you can really feel when you're in them, especially when they're small. It also, frankly, changes the proportions of the windows in the unit when we shrink those ceilings down. So in order to keep this at 45 feet, I'd not only have to squish the ceiling in Tri-County Produce, which would be unfortunate, but all of these 99 units would have to have lower ceilings, and the difference between 51 feet and 45 feet, you know, I would opt for the better living unit for the residents.
Thank you.
That's it? Okay. Commissioner Wardrow, you were next.
Thank you, Chair Balke. I have a question for staff. I think, could you guys go back to your presentation, slide 9? And my question is likely predictable from me, but my question is about, you know, every comment here today, the majority of comments here today have focused on affordable housing and the need for affordable housing and the importance of workforce development. And so here, I just am, and maybe I misunderstand, but so we're doing 15% very low income, but we're not doing any in low income or moderate income.
That's correct.
And is that because we don't have to? Is there an opportunity to? If we're going to give a community benefit height exemption, is there any way that we can have 15% low income and the 30% moderate income? Or is that fully just that is our ability as the city, we could ask for that, but that's up to the applicant? Is that my question's for the staff, sorry.
Okay. That's where the state density bonus law dictates the requirement.
So it's requiring 15%, but it's not requiring the 30%, right?
And the density bonus law entitles the project to the number of units that they're getting, the 50% bonus units.
And Commissioner Wardlow, one difference is that in the coastal zone, the AUD program has not been adopted, so we can't mandate the moderate.
Okay, so that was my question. There's no mandating of anything having to do with the moderate. The mandate is the 15% very low income, correct?
If I could
Just Commissioner Wardlow, we are not mandating the low income. That's what they're proposing in order to get the 50%.
In order to get
But under state density bonus, they have the option, they can do the 15% very low, or they could do 24% low.
Got it.
It's or, correct.
Okay, that's super helpful. I really appreciate that.
I just want to clarify, if I may, Chair Balke, Commissioner Wardlow. what's important to realize is, number one, in the state bonus density rules, no, that was great, what you
We'll
had.
go back, yeah.
Can you go
Yeah,
back?
keep that.
Yeah.
It's helpful.
So the moderate income density bonus only applies to for sale units, does not apply to rental units. We then can choose whether we want low income or very low under the state bonus density program. Obviously, you can see the very low yields a higher bonus density than the low. So that is, it's just a matter of deciding, okay, where do we want to end up in this? And we make the unilateral choice of whether they're low income or very low.
Okay, then that makes sense. Thank you for explaining. I have one more question for you, please. Is that okay? So understanding that, in a lot of projects, we have this conversation where it doesn't pencil out, we can't do affordable, blah, blah, blah. In this scenario, we're able to do 15 because of the fact that the state is giving you this kind of trade. Understanding that this board is going to likely want to provide, understanding that you're coming for a height exemption under a community benefit, is there any wiggle room in penciling out to accommodate any moderate income units as well?
Well, I'm probably not the person to ask that question. The ownership is, and it is, it is a question of cost. I couldn't agree with you more that, I wish that, and it's funny, there was a event that Brownstein, Farber, Hyber, Schreck, whatever, put on at the La Cumbre Country Club, and there was a state senator there, and we were talking about how different communities are, that a lot of communities, Modesto or whatever, really need the very low and low. What we need is the missing middle, and I wish there was a program to where we could do more moderate and not the very low or low, but we don't have that luxury. I know this community is in the process of exploring that idea, that we could have an alternative to state bonus density where we would get more moderate. But, that's where we are right now. And I think the only thing we can hope for is, and I know this is a questionable hope, but that if we have more units available, that it will help with the cost of the units.
And I do appreciate the number of units. I think that, to your point, that we're actually creating 99
hotel,
is
huh?
right. Well, I mean, obviously. So, I am happy to see that we're actually making a dent versus talking about 12 units total. We're talking about 99, which is substantial. But what we're talking about in terms of anything having to do with affordability, we're talking about 10 units. And that, given everyone's public comment, that is not 10 units is not out of 99 is not really addressing affordability when you're looking at the whole picture. But what you're saying is there's no, rules or help that the city has in place to assist in getting to moderate, but so it's fully the discretion of the developer. Okay, so how do we get there with can I talk with the developer? How do we get there with them?
You may.
Great. Hello. So understanding the immense support for affordable workforce housing and addressing and putting a little dent into our needs for somewhat affordable housing, what is your opinion on potentially adding some moderate income units in exchange for the community benefit height exemption?
I think we would love to, but right now, with all the issues going on in the economy, with interest rates, with rising costs in construction, I don't see how we can. I'm not even sure the project we're proposing right now that we could go out and finance and build it. We're waiting.
You've brought forward a project that you don't think that you can finance?
What I'm telling you is the current economic environment right now is so difficult with interest rates going up as fast as they've gone up that it's become very challenging. Now, we're banking on the fact that this process doesn't go very fast and interest rates are supposed to go down in the next year or two. But right now, it's thin. It's very, very thin.
Okay. I guess
And I have sat down with the Coastal Housing Coalition, and we went through the interior units, and we looked at, what those units are going to rent for. We also developed the site over here, Anatega, which I think our property manager told us the other day that over 50% of our tenants are Cottage Hospital employees.
That's
So,
great.
and they're very similar size units. They're designed by Brian. And I think just by design, I know everyone doesn't believe us, but by design, that's typically what you get. And you're within the AMI numbers of moderate income. And we had to go through this with the Coastal Housing Coalition when we met with them. And I was surprised where the actual AMI numbers are.
But if we weren't to give a height exemption, right, the number of units would be reduced, or the height of the units would have to be reduced or something, right? So you're needing this height
I'm
exemption.
not sure that we would proceed with the project.
If you had to do some moderate income units.
If we had to lower it 3 stories,
Oh, I'm not saying to lower it. I'm saying keep the height, if you were able to keep the height that you're proposing and then add in a few moderate income.
I would have to go back and look.
Okay.
I mean, I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me right now, and we could go back and take a look at it, but I highly doubt it.
Okay. I am respectfully requesting that you look into it as
I will.
feedback from this hearing, so that at the next time that we discuss this, that this can be part of that discussion.
You have my word.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
That's the end of my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Woodrow. So that concludes all the commissioners except for my comments. So I've got a number of them, and let's start with, first off, the whole conversation of how you're coming up with 66 units as the base density. When I first saw this project, I was just wondering very, very much how the city got to counting the railroad right away. Because I've done up to almost 5,000 housing units surrounding this railroad right away in 3 different counties. And almost every single one of them would not have counted those particular railroad right-of-way property as part of the calculation. And so I went hunting for a understanding of the city's net lot area, looking for a definition. And what I found is the city has no net lot area definition in the definition sections in either of its coastal or inland zoning ordinance. And there's only one place that even gives you a hint, which is a particular section which staff gave me, which has its own clarification language in it, which says that these definitions are to this section. So I would like to have the city attorney actually look into whether or not we have a net lot area definition that's usable and defensible in this case, because I know there's people that have concern about the density in here, and I'm not quite sure we have a definition that we can stand upon if somebody challenges this project. So that's the first question I have. Give me a second here. We talked about the affordable restrictions. And from what I understand, basically the only thing that's going to be restricted, and you can answer this question, either the developer or Mr. Cannell. So we're only looking at 10 units that will actually have a deed restriction of 55 years, period. That's it. Correct? Okay. Other questions I have was about the railroad easement. Has the city attorney looked at that railroad easement? Because I've done a lot of work with railroads. Railroad easements sometimes even control areas outside the easement as to what can be built, and so has the city actually reviewed those easements and make sure that there isn't any other complications to those easements that would be on this project?
Our office has not looked at those easements.
Okay. Has the applicant gone through and read all of them and had a lawyer go through them and make sure there isn't any complications when you go to UPRR and talk about their review approval, and because you actually have impacts actually on their property as part of what you're doing, and you're going to have to access their property to construct it because you're basically building up to the property line?
Yeah, Chair Balke, I have actually reviewed that easement extensively. I've been involved with John Dixon on this property for years preceding this project. A few years back, like in God, I can't even remember, 2012, 2013, the city was doing widening and sidewalk improvements along Milpas Street and reconfiguring that whole crossing and all that stuff. And so we had to really dig into that easement. And the easement language itself doesn't, I understand what you're saying, like there may be regulations that might apply, but the easement itself doesn't apply to anything outside of the easement. I mean, the easement is that's the legal interest that the railroad has over our property, and it's limited to that 91 feet that's within that easement. And we had talked about, how could we do a bigger parking lot? Could we put spaces in that easement, et cetera? And the way that easement's written, you really can't do anything in that easement. A lot of easements, as you know, they're like non-exclusive. So as long as you don't unreasonably interfere with the use for which the easement was granted, you can do stuff within it. This easement is virtually exclusive. So we can't do anything within it, but it also ends at the edge of the easement. They don't have an exclusive easement and then also the ability to regulate our uses outside that easement. So that's my understanding of that easement, that it's recorded on title to the property, and that's the document that I've reviewed.
Okay, because there's actually more than one easement reference in your title report. So the question is, there's a layering of them, all starting in 1990. So for some reason, the railroad in this case actually conveyed its fee interest to, which is unusual because you actually look up and down this railroad right away. There's only a couple other cases that private parties hold any interest in that right away. Most of it's still retained by UP or Southern Pacific as a grantor. So I just want to make sure you've done your due diligence and we're not coming back here with some issues.
It's the first thing we looked at, because the first thing these guys asked me about when they came to me before they were even really engaging with the owner on this project was, hey, how does that easement affect this property, especially with regards to the density issue? And we engaged with staff really early on that one. The typical definition of net lot area is the lot minus publicly dedicated road easements. And the railroad easement isn't in that category. And that's why, even though not every agency has to have an adopted definition of net lot area absent an adopted definition for net lot area, then there's just one definition for lot area. It's gross lot area. But in places where I have seen net lot area definitions, the county of Santa Barbara is the one that I'm most familiar with. It's the gross lot area minus public road easements. And so even there, that gets us to what we've got. But yeah, we did a lot of diligence on this easement before even starting off on this process. So we're pretty comfortable with it.
Okay. I may have differences of opinion on some of it, but we'll move on. Okay. Mr. Cornell, one of the items you brought up, which we didn't really get into yet, which is delivery trucks, loading, unloading. Where is that going to happen? One of the public commenters brought that issue up in some respects, and so can we discuss that?
So, Chair Balke, there is no way that obviously we are going to be able to continue to use our net lot area for loading of large trucks because of the podium structure. So that really leaves us with Calle Puerto Vallarta for that. There are more curb cuts here than what we're showing in the future. But this will need to be a designated loading area during certain periods of the day, presumably early in the morning, for trucks. I think the other part of this is, frankly, Tri-County Produce is going to have to manage the size of those trucks so that they are not large semi trucks. And I think there is a way, from at least our discussions, that they can manage that. But we cannot. That's really the only place we can load, because obviously along Milpas we don't have that. Where?
Behind the commercial space.
So
Upper left.
that.
No, down, right at the back of the space, up a little bit.
Here, you point to it.
Which one is it, the top one?
It's the top one, yeah.
That's a loading space, right there.
Okay.
And then a roll-up door into the.
So for smaller trucks, what Jeff was just explaining to me is that this is a loading area within that parking lot. But obviously, those would be limited to,
Like a van.
yeah, trucks that would be able to fit within that opening.
Okay, thank you. And that's the balance of my questions. So next, we will start with comments from the commissioners. So who would like to start? Commissioner Wiscombe.
I just jump in here and start. So we're basically looking at Exhibit D, the Coastal Act policies and the Coastal Land Use Plan policies with relation to this project, right? Mr. Baumann, that's what you'd like us to concentrate on, is that correct?
Right, plus any comments about visual simulations or story polls, that kind of
Okay.
thing. Any recommendations on
Okay.
those?
Great. Okay. So I'm just going to go through them. Section, this is the Coastal Act, Section 30222, the use of private lands for visitors. I don't think that applies because this isn't really a visitor-serving commercial recreational facility. So, but 30250, I'm on page 26 of 31, if anyone wants to follow along, shall be located within, contiguous with, or in close proximity to existing developed areas able to accommodate it. And I think that applies and this project conforms to 30250. 30251 is the scenic and visual qualities of the coastal area shall be considered and protected as a resource of public importance. I did a little research on this. I went to our certified local coastal program, which was done several years ago, and I looked at the scenic resources map in there. Mr. Baumann, did you have a slide on that or anything with the, if anyone can see that, just with this? And it appears that based on the before and after slides, the photo sims that the applicant has provided, and that the scenic and visual qualities of the coastal areas have been considered. And there is really no, there is no view cone or view circle on the map in here that pertains to this particular site that I could find. So I think the before and after ones are good for showing that views have been protected to the best extent possible, given the size of the development. In 30252, I'm just going to go to number 6, assuring that the recreational needs of new residents will not overload nearby coastal recreational areas. I think this is a perfect place for this project. Dwight Murphy Park is getting redone. That's getting a big revitalization, including the Gwendolyn Strong play area. That's, I think, the first in the country of totally accessible. Mr. Corrin's nodding yes. And the Cabrillo ball fields were revitalized several years ago. There's just a lot of resources. Got the Cabrillo Pavilion, which is just a beautiful facility that's come in. They're all really close by, and I think that this residential development is not going to overload our coastal recreation areas because of all these projects. They're really making advances. So, and then 30253, new development shall minimize energy consumption and vehicle miles traveled. I don't know how we're going to minimize vehicle miles traveled, but energy consumption, I think the solar panels are a good example of that. And getting to the industrial versus industrial for the railroad side of the building. I also looked in the component areas of our local coastal program. And this, as Mr. Baumann has said, is in the East Beach area. And right next door to it, and very close by, and actually abutting Milpas in one portion, is the industrial area, component area of our local coastal plan. So it's clearly shown as red is East Beach, and then this gray area is the industrial area, and Milpas is right on the border between the two of them. So I think that something can be said, although ABR will comment on that. I'm just commenting on that I think it's an intriguing solution to the architecture of the building. So where was I here? Okay, so I'm on to the coastal land use plan, LUP policies. 2.1-3, average unit size density incentive program, implement measures that incentivize smaller residential unit sizes. And I think this project has done that. So I'm very excited about that. I've always been an advocate for smaller unit size. So, and then Chapter 3.1, public access policies, potentially significant adverse traffic impacts affecting public access. This is where I talked in my questions about perhaps a traffic study of some sort, and I'll just say that I would support that. And there's also here provisions of bikeways and bike facilities. I will say that this project is greatly lacking in bike facilities. So I think there's a 586 square foot bike room or something, but I think the project definitely needs a bigger bike area. I think it's really important. Off-street policy 3.1-29, off-street parking for the new development, substantial redevelopment. We do have a parking study in our report, and I think that meets that policy. Okay, and we've talked about visitor serving recreational facilities policies, substantial redevelopment that results in substantially increased user demand. It's going to result in increased user demand, but I think the facilities can handle it given that they have been revitalized or are going to be revitalized. Then you go on to Chapter 4.3, scenic resources and visual quality policies. Let me see. I think in policy 4.3-2, enhance visual quality in degraded areas. I think the project definitely does that. And also Calle Puerto Vallarta will get a major visual enhancement. The street's going to be improved, and I think that will be, and the parking lot is proposed, the landscaping around the parking lot in the project is proposed, and I think it's going to be quite lovely. Policy 4.3-4, visual evaluation required. I think that the photo sims covered this. Someone mentioned story poles. I think that's ABR should decide on whether story poles are needed or not. And 4.3-7, compatible development. I've already talked about that. It's in the East Beach zone, but it's also in close proximity to the industrial zone. So I think it's the way it's designed, it is compatible, and I think it's going to be a great improvement to the neighborhood. At this point, I believe that I could, with some additional work, support the height increase. And that's the end of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker will be Lucille Boss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of comments. First, I really appreciated the comments about the need for workforce housing and the need for affordable housing. But I think if that's the intent, it needs to be explicitly stated. And I'm fairly certain that we'd need more very low income to accommodate the workforce that was referenced. So the camp counselors, grocery store staff, hospitality workers. And this project only would house 10 people in that workforce, so not even enough probably for the existing business that's there. So I just wanted to make that comment kind of for reference when we're looking at 99 units and 10 of them being very low income. I think some of the comments or some of the requests was to provide the early initial comments and any potential concerns. We've heard a bit about the request for traffic studies, so likely more about where the people will park when delivery or commercial vehicles are present, having studies different times of the year and a better understanding of delivery times. And around the community benefit housing project requirements, you mentioned one of the requirements is demonstrated need. And I think I got this right, that the applicant needs to adequately demonstrate a need for the project to exceed 45 feet that's related to the project's benefit to the community or due to site constraints or in order to achieve desirable architectural qualities. And we heard today about the ceiling height and livability, but I'm hoping they can return with more information about the demonstrated need as it relates to the community, or as it relates to the community benefit. Did also want to verify, I know it was mentioned today that the very low-income units are sprinkled throughout the project, so not just in one specific area. And again, if workforce housing is the focus of this project, we do need a better understanding of the level of affordability among all of them, not just kind of the lofty market rate, so that we have a better understanding of really who this project would serve. And those are my comments.
Okay, next speaker is Commissioner DeLuccio.
Thank you. I think I was alluding to what Commissioner Bosch was just expressing earlier on in my questioning. And also, Commissioner Wallow, as far as the need for more moderate housing in addition to the very low, I totally understand where you guys are coming from. Appreciate having at least 10 very low units in the building, considering that my understanding right now in the ordinance, it doesn't, you don't have to do any affordable units the way the ordinance is written currently. Now, as far as the bicycle space, I know currently it's just going to be built out for the employees. I would encourage you to perhaps to build some bicycle space also for the residents of the apartment building. Story poles, I agree, should be a decision made by the ABR if we need some story poles. As far as the design, I like the design, but again, I like the industrial on one side of the north and the more the Spanish look in the front. However, that's going to be a determination by the ABR also. As far as the height goes, I'm not going to make a determination on that right now, obviously, until it comes back to us for a decision. I know this is a conceptual hearing. I know you want to go from 45 to 51 and a half feet. I would want to, first, for this to go through the ABR before it comes back, and then we make a determination on that. I like the idea of it being pushed in on the back. I really like that approach where you tuck it in so it's not so obvious. And I mean, I tend to think there's a case for the higher height, but again, I think it needs to come back before we can make that final determination. And as far as the traffic goes, I think it's up to transportation to determine what further study may need to be done. I know they probably have cumulative numbers already for that neighborhood, and then I'm sure they put into their little system how the traffic. Additional traffic would factor in, and if it triggered any further study. But again, be kind of cool if we can do something about the ingress and egress. That kind of concerns me, and I know it concerns the applicant as well. I know we can't use Carrillo as Milpas as the any longer in the new development, but it would be interesting if that could be pursued further about a solution so all the traffic and loading and unloading is not on the residential street. So I think that's pretty much my comments at this time. Thank you, Chair.
Next up is Commissioner Wardrow.
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to say I greatly appreciate the work that the applicant has done in terms of the public engagement. I think you guys did a really great job of engaging your neighbors and really showing this commission that you've done that work and that we were able to hear a lot of positive feedback from the community on this. So that's step one, and I really appreciate that. Two, as a concept for the concept review, the density of this project, I'm very supportive of, so I'm excited to see real progress on this. In terms of the design, I know that some commissioners expressed different thoughts on this, and I just want to say that, I really like the renderings and the approach that you guys are going, mixing with traditional Spanish style with this industrial look. I think that's really kind of creative and a little bit different, and I like that it'll be different than the other kind of traditional Spanish complexes that we already have kind of in the West Beach area, so I like that. I am supportive of the high ceilings. I think that when you're in a small unit, but you have higher ceilings, it makes it a much more livable experience. So I think that it's good that we're creating housing that can be, for the long term, a great place to live for whoever's there. I like the approach to the open yard space in terms of what you guys have laid out with the different types of landscaping and the communal aspect of it. I think that's really great. It's, when you see the density that you guys are doing, I think it's important that you create that community space within this complex. So I like the efforts that are going there. What else do I say? In terms of the parking, I know that parking is always a concern, but I am hopeful that we can get to a place where, the parking that you've proposed, I hope is adequate. I look forward to seeing the traffic study and seeing a little bit more information on how this will all kind of flow with the rest of the community, but for the purposes of this discussion, I feel good about that. And really what this comes down to for me in terms of comments is that I hope that this can be an exemplary project to our community, that we can do better than what the state is requiring or saying that, you get X amount for doing 10 units of affordable. I appreciate that we're doing some affordable, but I would love to see, this project and the leaders of this project come back to us with a little bit more progress on how we can use this as a project to say, look, we've made progress on affordable housing, not just meeting the minimum, but doing a little bit more of above and beyond would be my hope for this project. I think you have a lot of things that are working in the right direction. I'm very excited to see this move forward. And I appreciate that it is a local team with a local architect, with local folks that we very well know. And I'm generally supportive of this. So I also concur with a lot of the comments from Commissioner Boss. So thank you.
Next speaker is Commissioner Lodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a bit of a shock when I first looked at the map for all of this and realized that we made a mistake when we changed the boundaries of El Pueblo Viejo a number of years ago. I don't remember how long ago it was. Our intent was to have the entries to the city be included. So both sides of West Carrillo, from state to the freeway, are in EPV. So are both sides of Castillo, both sides of state, going up, and of course that connects with the EPV that was already there, and both sides of Garden. And here we have it. It's in EPV on the west side, but it's not here. This is an entrance to Santa Barbara, and people either accessing the freeway, heading southbound, or coming off the freeway, if they're going to want to go up Milpas Street, or people coming down Milpas Street, they will be getting a full-on view of this industrially designed building that isn't anywhere in Santa Barbara. It will look like people on the train going through an eastern or midwestern industrial city where the railroad tracks are lined with industrial buildings. That isn't Santa Barbara, it isn't appropriate. And I think it really should speak to what Santa Barbara's architecture is all about. I once went through all the books, the guidebooks in Chaucer's that had reference to Santa Barbara. They all referred to the red tile, white or stucco, as one of the appealing things of Santa Barbara. As for the density, I was curious. I asked Mr. Baumann, how many units would be allowed if the AUD high priority overlay applied to this property? That would be 87 units without, and that's not including the railroad easement. So this isn't, in terms of what we're doing elsewhere in the city, the density isn't all that great. And as I said, that doesn't include the railroad easement. It is perfect location for housing. And I'm glad to see it happening. However, we shouldn't fool ourselves. As Commissioner Wardlaw pointed out, it's only 10 units of very low, which leaves 89 units. That will be market rate. That's what we've found with the AUD projects. Developers all initially in promoting, encouraging this kind of development, said, be affordable by design. Well, there is no such thing. The rents are in the many thousands for the units that are not rent restricted and not affordable by any means to anybody that works in any of the hotels or in Mr. Dixon's store or at the zoo. And I'd like to remind my colleagues and say once again to those in the audience that in order to include an inclusionary requirement in the AUD projects, the city had to do a nexus study, a study showing the connection between the new units and the increased demand, increased new market rate units, and the increased demand for affordable housing. And that showed that they need to just keep up. You have new units, you're going to have new population in the city. They're going to have new needs. They'll need doctors, they'll need whatever, any sorts of services. They'll create more jobs, and the jobs housing imbalance gets worse. Just to keep up with the increased demand from the additional residents takes 20% inclusionary. And, I think this is, as I said, I think this is a great site for a project like this, but I don't want people to get fooled into thinking that it's going to do anything towards solving our affordable housing needs. And I ran this analysis that I just spoke about past economics professor Peter Rupert from UCSB, and he said it was correct. So it's not something that I'm just making up. Okay, so I'd like to yes to the housing, no to the increased height, and no to the industrialization of Santa Barbara's architecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lodge. That's all the other commissioners except for myself. So I have a few comments. Some of them are quite technical, but I figured I might as well pass them on if I can. First off, I was looking at the conceptual grading plan, and it shows that you have your approximate limits of your grading within the easement that UPRR holds. And I wasn't sure how that was going to work in the end of the day, because you're now subject to their discretion, and as one that's dealt with them, that could take years or decades. I'm still working on 2 train station projects with UPR are, and they're now at year 25. So engaging them, finding out your limitations would be something I would suggest you do as soon as possible. Second, when you're dealing with railroads, you have the Federal Railroad Agency and the Rail Safety Act to deal with, and I'm not quite sure your project complies with it because usually they require a wall system or a fencing system to keep people from getting to the tracks, and you may be seeing that coming forward, which would be very problematic the way your design currently is. One thing I definitely would believe, and this is more of a set of comments to staff, that there's a number of environmental review issues that definitely this project will need to clear the thresholds on. Number one is, which was actually mentioned by Commissioner Wiscombe during our site visit, which is sea level rise. The next one is, because it is a railroad right-of-way, there's very historic potential extensive exposures to hazardous material based on what's happened with railroads historically, and you may find things that you didn't know when you start doing this project, and I'm not sure if you've done your phase 2 and phase 3 and whatever at this point, but that's definitely going to be an issue that needs to be dealt with. You're doing some demolition of old buildings, and there probably is PCB and asbestos issues that need to be dealt with, and maybe even other chemicals like mercury exposure that you would have to clear on the demolition side, much less the air quality issues of APCD. Then we have the noise issues, both interior and exterior noise standards that are in the law, both in the building code and elsewhere, which you will need to meet, and I'm not sure you're there yet, but that's something you need to get into. And then there is an issue which sometimes people don't think about, which is, as somebody that lived at one point in time right next door to a rail train area, was the potential exposure for ground-borne vibration. And that's a whole technical area which you will need to delve in, and shaking of your building and shaking of your residents and the windows and all that. Other issues which my fellow commissioners have raised, which definitely the studies will answer these questions. One is traffic and circulation. And I mentioned the concern I have about drop-offs and deliveries and how that's going to work. And we also have the access in and out of the podium issues of visibility when you have large trucks parked where Brian was suggesting, that may become a problem. We need to definitely clear through that. So those are just a bunch of technical issues. I definitely support the concept of the project. And, I don't have the issues which Commissioner Lodge does about the height. I think you're building the kind of building that is needed for the market today. The higher floor plates for the commercial, 14 feet, sort of a given with the HAV systems that you need to have. And since you're going to only 800 square feet each unit size, that having the higher floor plate is needed to make them more livable. I agree with Commissioner Warlow as to wanting and seeing and desiring more than just the 10 units of affordability, especially considering how the project, Mr. Dixon, has been expressed in the press, that that it's not just it's workforce housing, and to do that may need some more affordability other than just the few. And I'd really would be interested in how employee preference is going to work, and how you're going to make sure that your employees are the ones that get to be there, because that's a great benefit of lowering vehicle trips if they're actually living on site. And there's also a complication, and I'm not sure we've got into this, but there's a state statute on employee housing, which if it gets over 6, it gets in the, but I'm not sure how that all works with this, so I want to make sure you address that. So that's my comments. So is there any additional comments from the commissioners?
Yeah, I think I just want to reiterate to Commissioner Bauke, it will be disappointing if, this project comes out in the press as this is a workforce development project and that there's going to be workforce development housing. And if that is the kind of narrative around this, yet there's only 10 very low-income units, that's going to be a little concerning if that is kind of, because if it is going to be wrapped like that and kind of touted in that way, then I really hope we can do better than the minimum from the state.
So any other comments? Then I'm going to wrap this up. So we're done with this item. Hope to see you soon. I hope the process gets you here faster. Thank you.
I hope I won't be crippled at that point.
All right, moving on. Commissioners. So, next on our agenda, I believe, is the administrative agenda, which is committee and liaison reports. First off would be the staff hearing officer liaison report by Commissioner Boss.
Mr. Jarrett, no staff hearing officer report for today.
I'll get that. You have none, okay. And somehow I skipped an item on, which is the, which is the selection of somebody for the earthquake bicentennial. Who would
Yes.
like?
Thank you, Commissioner or Chair Bauke. I just wanted to let the planning commissioners know that there are some established, or an established first meeting date for the 1925 earthquake centenary committee for their 100th anniversary of the earthquake. The first meeting would be held June 17th at 10 a.m. That's a Saturday. Or an alternative meeting date is June 29th at 5:30. That's a Thursday. So just wanted to mention those dates so that hopefully whoever is chosen to be on that committee can make one of those dates. Thank you.
Do we have a volunteer? She said one. It's one person, right?
Preferably one. They said they would be open to 2.
Okay, I think it should be, since it's 1925, I think it should be someone that's newer on the commission that whose term, we're representing the planning commission, is that correct?
That is
So
correct.
it should probably be someone whose term extends into 2025. That would be my comment.
Mr. Chair, I was approached by the chair, Steve Howes, and asked if I would be on it. And I said yes, but that was before it came, and at that time, it was 2 representatives that they were talking
Okay.
about. But
I nominate Lucille.
I'll second that.
I think if it's appropriate to have 2, I'm happy to join Commissioner Lodge.
Okay, with that,
My apologies, I didn't realize that Commissioner Lodge was saying that she would be willing to do it.
that was the conversation she was having, which,
Commissioner Lodge, can you repeat what you said? The chair of this committee asked you to be on the committee, is that correct?
yes.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Well, then I'll nominate Commissioner Lodge.
And I
A second.
second that. Yes,
so if we can have 2,
yes, both of them.
I would
Yeah.
suggest, and somebody makes we have a motion, so I don't think we need a voice vote.
I'll make a motion for Commissioner Lodge and Commissioner Boss.
I'll second that.
Okay. Moved and seconded, and I don't have to roll on this, do we? No. Voice, I see no objection, so ruled. So with that, any other, going back to the item before that I missed, any other committee and liaison reports from any other commissioners?
I have an HLC one. I have one from HLC.
Okay, well, you can go.
Historic Landmarks Commission. The May 24th meeting, 1713 LaSwain, that project that came before Planning Commission for the interior setback and maximum floor area modifications, which we approved. You can have a copy of it. That's 1713 LaSwain Road, and the project went back to HLC, and they received design approval and compatibility findings were made. June 7th meeting, 932 De La Vina, that's the corner of Carrillo Street. That's currently a Jiffy Lube site. That was there, that's been there twice for conceptual and pre-application, and they highly were complimentary of the design at their last meeting. And that's going to be coming to the Planning Commission for a height exception to allow a maximum height of 50 feet, 4.5 inches, 50 feet, 4.5 inches at the highest point. And that's a 22 residential apartment building, and it's under the AUD program. So that's my report.
Okay, thank you. Any other reports? Okay, well, with that, I will close the meeting, and it will be at 3:15 with our next meeting being, what, July 6th? That is correct, July 6th. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Bauke.